All right, welcome back, guys. I'm Jake Ellenbogen. You can follow me at JK Bogan on all social media. And today we are going to be talking about how the Los Angeles Rams, who are now 4-6 off their very tough win against the Seattle Seahawks to sweep the series for the season, how they can make the playoffs. So it sounds a little ridiculous. I get it. This team is, was coming off a win and they are only 4-6. But when you think about the state of the NFC, it's not completely out of the question. And it's going to have to lead the Rams down a path they haven't gone at all this year. They haven't been able to, first off, win games like they did against Seattle. They haven't been able to get those things done. Winning that game the way they did was the exact opposite of what they did against the Steelers. They were the Seattle Seahawks against the Steelers. They dominated that football game and they had it taken away in the final quarter. The Rams, they took the game away yesterday. So they're going to have to figure out, doesn't matter how they do it, but they're going to have to figure out at least another way to win 4 to 5 more games if they want to make the playoffs. So let's dive into it. Courtesy of New York Times, they have this, playoff simulator thing right now. We see here the Rams have a 16% chance of making the playoffs. The Eagles game today means nothing to that equation, so we won't even bother predicting that game. So this is how the Rams can sneak into the playoffs here. Week 12, what we're going to want to see right off the rip is that the Rams, of course, have to take care of business and sweep another division rival in the Arizona Cardinals. At that point, that goes up to 20%. But think about this. This stuff is already happening. These 3 games are happening on Thanksgiving. So in a perfect world for the Rams, you want the Lions to take the Packers out. And, of course, you want the Cowboys to take out the Commanders. And then you want the 49ers to take out Seattle. Now, if all those things happen, it's calculating, it's about 23%. Then there's some other things that need to happen. And of course, not all of this has to happen, but it helps. It's the best way. It's good for the Saints to get their division win out of the way. So you're not in a bunch of, a 4-way tie where there's a bunch of different tiebreakers that come into it. So with that being said, the Saints are currently the favorite to win the NFC South. So you'd want them to just win out at this point. Helps out the Rams. They're about a 29% chance of making the playoffs. And then the team that the Rams were able to beat in Indianapolis in overtime, they were able to take down the Colts. If the Colts win that game, I guess they're saying it gives them less of a chance. I disagree with that, but, this is 68,000 different simulations. So this is kind of predicting the future based on this. But anyway, we move on. The Vikings, that loss against the Broncos helped out the Rams as well. So if the Bears are able to take down the Vikings here, that also helps out the Rams. So about 30% leaving week 12 if all of this happens. We don't have to get into any of the AFC stuff because it just doesn't really impact. The Giants don't really matter in this equation. So these are the things in week 12 that can help the Rams. And now they're at a 30% chance. They actually have a 1% chance of winning the division, believe it or not, as you can see there. So then we move on to week 13. And now, of course, Seattle is dealing with some injuries. This is, you can see here, basically the highlights, like the really, bolder highlights. These are the most important games for the Rams playoff chances. So if the Cowboys take down the Seahawks, which is, I would say, very likely at this point, that percent chance goes up to 35. And then, of course, if the Jets take out the Falcons, that's going to help a little bit, although it says it hurts, which is kind of weird. So I guess we'll just kind of leave that alone. So let's go to the Saints. This one doesn't really matter. I know it says it matters, but if the Saints just went out, that this doesn't have any effect on the Rams. So let's go to right here, the Rams. They take out the Browns, and now this is now just creeped up to the 48% range week 13. And if you look down here, the Rams have taken over sole custody of the 7th seed in the playoffs because this tiebreaker over Seattle. Seattle lost both games to the Rams. They're 1-3 in the division. So a head-to-head tiebreaker would be all it takes, but the Rams would also win the conference tiebreaker there over Seattle. So that's why yesterday's game was so pivotal if they want to make the playoffs. The Packers here have the head-to-head tiebreaker over the Rams. So if the Chiefs beat the Packers here, that helps a ton. As you can see, now we're not even in week 14, which, by the way, last year, it took week 14 for the Rams to get their 4th win. The Rams now push over a 50% chance of making the playoffs, and you're not even in week 14 yet. Again, this stuff, I mean, you could say the Jets and all that, but we're sticking with the ones that matter the most here. So let's go to week 14 here. The Rams, this is going to be a tough one. If the Rams beat the Ravens here, this percentage goes above 75, and they now have a 4% chance of winning the division. Not extremely likely to win the division. I think it's more about just making the playoffs at that point. But you think about it, you're like, okay, 76% chance is really good. Now, if the 49ers beat Seattle, that actually, I guess, goes down, which is kind of funny. But then you have, the Vikings, the Raiders. If the Raiders take out the Vikings, this thing is, hovering around 78. Then you have, down here, the Packers. If the Giants beat the Packers, this thing is now over 80%. So, of course, I do believe the Rams can beat the Browns. I think they could beat anybody in the league, but I also think they can lose to anybody in the league, and we've seen that. Now, the Rams are undefeated coming off the bye. They've only played one game, and they didn't look entirely great yesterday. So, let's be a little realistic here. I think the Ravens are the best team in the AFC. So what does that mean for the Rams if they lose this game? It doesn't cripple them. This is still hovering around a 50% chance in or out. So this game, as long as they win the next 2 out of 3, they're still in good shape. If you win one of those games, or if you're going to lose one of those games, you want to lose it to the AFC. But I do still like their chances very much, even if they drop this game. Now, week 15, we'll keep them dropping that game. At 6-7, they have the tiebreaker over Seahawks. The Seahawks have the NFC reigning champion Eagles. I think the Eagles win that game. Percentage chance goes up to 56. Rams take out the Commanders here. And once again, the Rams are back around the 69 to 70% range. If the Bengals were to win this, that would be great, although I don't see it happening. Not without Joe Burrow. So I'll take the Vikings in that one. And then we have the Packers and Buccaneers. I mean, this one matters, but they're two teams. Like, this team has the tiebreaker, and then you have the Buccaneers. I'll just say the Packers because they're at home. And then this one, the Panthers, because they're at home. I could see them stealing that. So that puts them at a 74% chance. And then week 16 against the Saints, this is almost clinching right here. Thursday night football, this is a huge matchup in this case. The Rams would be at 7-7 taking on the Saints. If they win this game, their percentage chance goes to 90% week 16. And that would mean that, again, this playoff chance right here, it doesn't really matter a ton. Obviously, if the Titans won that would be great for the Rams, but still, the Rams have the tiebreaker over Seattle. And in this scenario, they'd be a game ahead, and then rather 2 games ahead because they have the tiebreaker. The Vikings are, if they lose to the Lions here, this puts the Rams in good position, but it is in Minnesota. So if the Vikings do win that, it does hurt the Rams a little bit. But as you can see, if the Rams just keep, everything in front of them, if they, take down teams that are in front of them, if they stick to the script, if they're able to win their games and control their own destiny, right? Then they have a 90% chance. Even dropping that game against the Ravens, they would have a 90% chance of making the playoffs. And then you have a week 17 juicy matchup against a team that is pretty much, I don't know who they'll be starting at that point. Maybe Tommy DeVito, but the Rams play extremely well at MetLife Stadium. They have outscored the Giants by almost 60 points the last 2 meetings, and this is probably the worst Giants team that the Rams have faced at MetLife. That would be pretty much the playoff clinching scenario for the Rams to win that game. Now you're sitting there at 9-7, and then you go to week 18, and the San Francisco 49ers would be the game. And, this doesn't even matter at this point. So, Niners, the Rams win that, and they're completely in, but they'd pretty much clinch with a win against the Giants week 17 based on all this. So that does mean the Rams have to go and win the next, 5 out of 6 games. So they're, that's still there. You of course have to pull that off, but it's still very possible. The Browns are going to be a tough game. It is at home though. You look at week 12, the Rams have had the Cardinals number. The Cardinals are going to be tougher. The Rams can do that. The Rams can beat the Browns because this is going to be a potential rookie quarterback starting at SoFi Stadium. Rams should have the home field advantage there. Then week 14, this is the toughest game left on the schedule. This is not late enough where the Ravens can justify sitting starters. So you get to this point and it's like you're going up against one of the best teams in all of football, and who I would say is probably my AFC favorite to go to the Super Bowl. But here's one thing. They did lose Mark Andrews, okay? Lamar has been banged up a little bit. OBJ's been banged up. So we'll see what happens here. The Rams haven't played Lamar Jackson since 2019. Jackson had 5 touchdowns in that game at the Coliseum. So I don't know what's going to happen. We've seen a lot of quarterback injuries and, never want to root for that. But that game is so huge. If the Rams were to pull that off and they were to just go on this run, then all this stuff really doesn't matter, because if they win this game, then you can kind of take this week away and they pretty much clinch. Let's see. Hold on a second. We'll go here. So even all that said, if the Rams win that game, week 14 with everything, here, and then week 15, they could beat the Commanders and have a 90 or 88% chance of making the playoffs. So that's impressive. This would be a crazy turnaround, but it's not out of the realm of possibility when you factor in what this Rams team is. They have a lot of talent. They have great coaching. They have experience. A lot of these guys have been there. You look at Ernest Jones, who is a mainstay captain of the defense. He played in the Super Bowl his rookie year, kind of molded him into what he's become. You've seen, the coaching staff. Raheem Morris has coached the Super Bowl defense. Sean McVay has called plays when everybody was down and out, so to speak. OBJ got hurt. Robert Woods was out. Deshaun Jackson left the team. Van Jefferson wasn't 100%. They have gone through adversity before. Guys that are on this squad have gone through adversity. They've seen it. They've gone through the fire. But I think they're going to get this thing done. I do. Because who are you going to choose out of these teams? So week 12, out of all these teams, you got the Cardinals. They're pretty much out of it if they lose. They're pretty much out of it anyway. But then you have the Vikings. If the Vikings beat the Bears, that kind of changes things a little bit. But the Vikings and Seahawks occupy the 6th seed and the 7th seed. And that's the thing. Like, they occupy the 6th and 7th, but right now, those teams are both sitting at 6 and 5. That's why this week was so favorable for the Rams. The only way that this would have been a more perfect week is if the Packers and Chargers game went differently. That's the only way. This was about as good of a week as the Rams could have asked for coming off the bye. They got the win against Seattle. They take over the sole position of that tiebreaker. And now, they have a chance to just, as long as they take care of everything in front of them, they have a chance to make the playoffs. And if they make the playoffs at that point, who knows what happens? Because, look, I'd have to assume that they're pretty hot at that point if they take, if they make the playoffs, because you have to, and that's the beauty about it. We've seen it. We saw the 49ers team that went 3-5 the year the Rams went to the Super Bowl and the Niners went to the NFC title and lost to the Rams. We saw the 49ers. They looked dead in the water at 3-5. They rallied and turned it into a 10-7 season. The Rams could turn this into a 10-7 season. This Giants game, yeah, but also the thing about this game against the 49ers, the 49ers might be sitting their starters. If they don't have a chance of getting a 1 or a 2 seed, maybe they're just sitting their starters at this point. Who knows? You know? So that's interesting. Also, if they were to win out, they have a 15% chance of taking the division, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. So, I mean, we're gonna find out, because this is the beauty about the NFL is that you think you know everything and you just really don't. And this is why you have to play the games. You know, we could be calling these games easy wins. Like, you could be like, oh yeah, the Rams are definitely gonna take down the Cardinals. What if the Rams lose to the Cardinals and win the rest of their games? Who would have thought that, right? Or, you know, we're saying, oh yeah, you know, this Saints team, this is an easy one. It's Thursday night. It's at SoFi. What if the Rams lose this to the Saints, but then they win every other game? You know, or what if this Rams team loses the rest of the year? We don't know what's going to happen. And so I think that's the beauty about this, is because you can't skip episodes. You have to watch week in and week out. You have to keep following. And the bottom line is, yesterday was not the best game they've ever played, but it doesn't matter, because what it comes down to is that the Rams got the job done. They were able to overcome, you know, losing Cooper Kupp. They were able to overcome the fact that, look, you could say what you will about the penalties on the Seahawks side. The penalties were bad in general. You're talking about 21 penalties were accepted. Over 200 plus yards were accepted in that game. That's a hard game to win. And that's where, you know, the margin for error goes down to this. You can say, oh, there was no Geno Smith and Kenny Walker. I mean, the Rams didn't have Kyron Williams. I mean, it could have gone different if they had Kyron Williams. They'll have him this week. A big reason why I am so confident in this team is because, one, as much as I love Cooper Kupp, I don't know what's going to happen with him, but as much as I love him, Cooper Kupp, without Cooper Kupp in the offenses look better. It's not his fault, but the offense has more diversity to it. They diversify the targets, the personnel groupings, the players. I mean, we saw Austin Trammell being used. We saw Demarcus Robinson being used. So, you know, looking at that, that's a big deal. But then I think, furthermore, you know, when you go out and now you're going to get Kyron Williams back, guys, that was the first win the Rams have had without Kyron Williams yesterday. You know, I think they've learned a lot about their running backs. I think Henderson impressed, you know, yesterday in the passing game. I think Royce Freeman was great down the stretch in the run game. Kyron Williams can do it all. I think they are going to be a much better football team with Williams back. And the last time he saw, you know, the Cardinals, he went for 158 yards on 20 carries. So, you know, I think this is definitely there's a possibility here. This isn't just homer thinking. This isn't just hope. This isn't just copium or whatever you want to call it. The Rams really have a shot here. And, you know, I think it really all starts with this week, because, you know, again, you know, as I've said throughout the week, if you guys follow me on YouTube or social media or whatever, going all the way back to the beginning, you know, this Rams win over the Seahawks or loss over the Seahawks was really going to determine, in my opinion, the rest of the season for the Los Angeles Rams. If the Rams lost this game to the Seattle Seahawks, I don't really think that they have a shot. Okay. I just don't. The fact they were able to overcome that and get the win against a tough division rival was massive. I can't stress that enough. So look, you know, you look at this right now, and these 3 games are impactful. 49ers win that, Cowboys, Lions. Right then and there, you know, the Rams win this game, and you're looking at over, wow, it's saying over it's not saying 50%. And I took everybody out. So, oh no, I didn't take this one out. That's probably why. There we go. So yeah, around a 30% chance of making the playoffs if they take care of business and those teams lose. So, like I said, anything is certainly possible in this league. We saw it, the Jacksonville Jaguars last year. They go 3-7, and then they're able to overcome that and win a bunch of games down the stretch and end up winning a playoff game with a young quarterback. I mean, you know, you can never rule it out. And I think right now the Rams are in a great position where everyone who thought that they were tanking, they have a chance to really flip the script. So, you know, we'll see what happens. I'm excited to see it. I know, some of you are. I know some of you also want, a high draft pick, but I really don't think that you should count this team out. I think it's very possible that they're in the playoffs. And, what does that playoff matchup look like? Whether it's going up against the Lions in the first round as the 7th seed versus the 2 seed, or going up against the Niners or somebody like that. I really do believe they have a shot. And if they get in, I mean, think about this. The Niners, that would be the 3rd time they're facing them. They're 1-0. Sean McVay's 1-0 against Kyle Shanahan in the playoffs. They just lost Talanoa Hufanga for the season. And I feel like the Rams did a really nice job week 2 and probably should have won that game if not for a few injuries on their offensive line that kind of hurt them. But, we'll see in that regard. On the Lions side of things, I think the Lions are a Super Bowl caliber roster, but what could be a problem is Jared Goff going against an offensive coordinator, a head coach, a play caller that knows him so well, a defensive coordinator, Raheem Morris, that, was able to get a win against him in the Super Bowl season. They picked him off at the end of the game. It was Jalen Ramsey. So look, I would never rule any game out. As long as the Rams get the big dance, I think anything can happen. And that's the beauty of it. So can the Rams sneak into the playoffs? Absolutely. Will they? That remains to be seen. I think they're going to. I really do. I think they're going to take care of business against the Cardinals this week. I think that the Rams are going to take down the Browns. I think they are going to lose to the Ravens. I think they're going to beat the Commanders. I think they're going to beat the Saints. I think they're going to beat the Giants. And then I'm kind of up in the air about the 49er game, because at that point, the 49ers might be sitting their starters or resting their starters at least half the game. So if that's the case, then I got the Rams. If not, then the 49ers. So now you're at 9-8, and they still have an 85% chance to make the playoffs. And if they go 10-7, then they're going to make the playoffs for the most part. So this kind of goes to show you guys, I didn't change anything aside from week 12. Even if I don't move these at all, if they were to go 10-7, they have a 99% chance of making the playoffs. Like that. I mean, it's all right in front of them. And that's giving them a loss. This is with them losing to the Ravens. If they lose to the 49ers without changing anything, going 9-8 gives them a 77% chance of making the playoffs. So what does this tell you? Well, really, now let's just say that the Rams dropped the game against the Saints. So that's what this tells you. The Rams can only lose 2 more games, and they pretty much have to be against the 49ers and the Ravens if they lose them. If they drop 3 at 8-9, they have a 12% chance of making the playoffs. Those are the cold hard facts. It doesn't become very likely if they drop 3 games, but 2 games, that's doable. And 1 game is still doable. Either way, the Rams sit at 4-6. They've played 10 games. They have 7 left. And if they go 5-2 the rest of the way, they have, as New York Times has, a 76% chance of making the playoffs. Sign me up for those odds, because I think they can do it. But it's just going to have to result in them, being different. This year, they haven't really been able to have winning streaks. To do this, they would need their first 3-game winning streak of the season, taking down the Cardinals and then the Browns. That would be a 3-game coming off a bye. If they lose to the Ravens, that wraps that up. Then they would need to have another 3-game win streak at the very least. And then week 18, if they're able to win that, then it's done. So we'll see what happens. Be sure to follow me on socials at JK Bogan. You can follow me on this app, the Bleacher Report app, at JK Bogan as well. This has been fun, guys. But yeah, don't count this team out. Don't just assume this is mock draft territory. It's November. The Rams, first off, Matthew Stafford is now 4-0 against Seattle. Sean McVay is 10-5 against Pete Carroll all time. The Rams just won their first game in November in Matthew Stafford's tenure as a Rams quarterback. That says a lot. That's even the Super Bowl season. So we'll see what happens. They can bounce back. The schedule is favorable the rest of the way. I would say this. There are some tough games. The Saints game, they could be playing for, a division. I don't know if it'll be a division clinch, but could be. So the Saints, that's going to be a tough game. The Browns could be a tough game. That defense is ferocious. However, it would be in LA and it'd be against a potential rookie quarterback. So that's a good thing. Another thing here, that Ravens game, really big problem. The 49ers game, the Giants and Commanders, you got to take care of business. Those are games that you need to win. Those are surefire, need to win games. Cardinals game, the Browns game could be tough. The Rams can only drop 2 more games at max, in my opinion. They're not getting into the playoffs at 8-9, but they could get in the playoffs at 9-8, and they definitely are getting into the playoffs at 10-7 and 11-6. I mean, now all of a sudden you're asking yourself whether it makes sense to root for the Seahawks the next 2 games against the Niners, because they'd have a shot. If they go 11-6, they'd have a shot of taking that division. So that would be crazy. Not saying that's going to happen at all. I'm saying right now, focus on, they have 2 games that they can lose the rest of the way. They got 7. They have to go 5-2 if they want to make the playoffs, in my opinion. Obviously some things could change and it could be tough for them to get in. Who knows how it's going to work out, but most likely if they go 5-2 the rest of the way, they have a pretty good chance of making the playoffs without even picking any of the games, aside from that. So that's all I got for you guys. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys soon. Later, folks.